Sorry, guys, this is like a million part series again, so I apologize. Um, so, school counselors and liability. Counselors need to educate school employees and the teachers of risk factors associated with adolescent suicide. As teachers, you are mandated reporters. Now, a lot of times in school settings, I work in a school setting occasionally. I don't know. I was told today, or I was told yesterday by a client who also works in like some source social services that 20% of mandated reporters are, I'm sorry, that was wrong. 20% of CPS reports come from teachers. So you can imagine right now where kids haven't been in school, like numbers for CPS reports have been down. Um, a lot more teachers could mandate report than do. I think they're fearful. It's scary, but man, kids need it. They need your support. They need you, like you notice things about them. And yes, school counselors, that's our responsibility too, but we sometimes don't, school counselors don't always have as much contact as a teacher does all day long. So peer assistant programs could be put in place for suicide risk. There's a lot of training right now for suicidality. A lot of training. Suicidality is huge in schools. I know with RUSD, they have this program on like the tablets and the school computers where it's like anything suicidal that pops up, it like flags it, and then a counselor has to go and talk to that student. Maybe they Googled a certain word or something, and it flags the system. And so they're very conscientious of that because of the rise in suicide in young people. And it's really sad, but it's something that really needs to be dealt with. One of the first cases that addressed school counselor liability for student suicide was Easel versus Board of Education, 1991. And so we want to make sure that, even in a school setting, of course, that we're like they do risk assessments often, and that's with sometimes school police or school counselor, assistant principal, school counselor. But they're very conscientious of that in schools, at least in the schools I have dealt with. So, suicidal behavior, what are things we're looking for? Take direct verbal warning seriously. We don't joke. We don't say, well, that person's just being dramatic. It's not your job to judge that. Pay attention to other attempts. Identify clients suffering from depression, feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, anxiety. It's a lot of they have a lot of stress. They have not a lot to live for from their perspective. Have they been diagnosed with a terminal illness? Has there ever been suicide in family? Do they have a support system? And we know with kids, some kids don't. Does the client have a plan and intention? Do they have drug or alcohol abuse? Do they have access to prescription medication? Like prescription medication can be very dangerous. What kind of behavior are they having? Are they giving away all their stuff? Are they like summing up their business affairs? I think in the documentary on Jeffrey Epstein, he summed up his business affairs a couple of days before he conveniently died. So, those kinds of things. It's just, have they ever been hospitalized? Do they have any sort of psychiatric problems? These are all the things that you're looking for in suicide. Now, don't shy away from asking the hard questions. People get intimidated to ask like, are you harming yourself? Do you have a plan? Do you have an intention? Do you have access to these weapons? How often do you think about this? Like, don't be afraid of suicidal ideation. Suicidal ideation can be very different than being suicidal, okay? And so you have to find out the difference, and you have to ask the tough questions and be straightforward, okay? The reason we are mandated reporters is we're designed to encourage reporting and to protect. There's a process to doing that. And it's not necessarily very complicated. It's a form that you fill out with Child Protective Services. And, you should be trained in that with whatever facility that you go to. You'll have a course on child abuse, and they'll go over the form with you. Anytime I've called to report child abuse, I have only gotten great people who are very kind and walk with me through the process, even though I've done it before. Like sometimes it's a lot of time in between. And I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right. They'll now ask this really kind of funny question, and they're like, what do you think should happen in this scenario? And I'm like, it's kind of a nerve-wracking question, actually, but I'm great to answer it. Like, I'll answer that question, and then we move along, But they're usually pretty kind and helpful when you're walking through that process, especially for the first time. What are different types of elder abuse? Okay, Elder abuse, dependent adult abuse. Dependent adult is someone who's incapable of taking care of themselves. They may not be elderly, but they are dependent. Okay, so same as kids, right? Physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological or emotional abuse, neglect, abandonment, financial maltreatment. That's like when someone comes in and takes over their finances and is exploiting them. And so those are the different kinds of like abuse. Now, when we're talking about confidentiality in certain illnesses, right? HIV, right, is one of those ones where confidentiality is huge, right? And a client is entitled to their privacy. So it is extremely important to know the specific law in your jurisdiction and to seek consultation from a colleague and experience with reporting requirements. So if someone's like, has HIV and they're out sleeping around, not telling anyone, right? When I say sleeping around, I mean having sex. So there's not a law clear to duty to warn, okay? And so that is something for you to be mindful of and like to consult on if that kind of situation comes up. Now, clients having HIV, they're entitled to their confidentiality, and like most probably people with HIV are very responsible. Well, I would like to think are very responsible in how they handle that and how they deal with that with their partners and things of that nature. From a legal perspective, breaching confidentiality because of a client's HIV status is not one of the exceptions to confidentiality, meaning like you don't get to breach confidentiality just because the person has AIDS or HIV. HIV counseling, I had a student actually in a group class like years ago on main campus, and she worked for like a community type center for people dealing with an HIV diagnosis or an AIDS diagnosis, and it was great the work that they were doing there. Obviously, a lot of confidentiality was there. They had a lot of groups for people who newly found out that they were positive, groups with people who are young and older who have walked through it for longer, so it created a lot of resiliency and hope. Not everyone who has HIV and AIDS got it in a way that, is deemed like your fault or something. People who like got it from a parent or may have gotten it from a blood transfusion or all these different things, right? And so you just have to know what your state laws are in regards to HIV and AIDS, okay? But AIDS counseling, HIV counseling can be very rewarding, working with a population who's living with a life-threatening illness their whole life, and the medications and things of that nature. It just can be really rough, all the side effects, decisions that you have to make. And so it can be a very positive, powerful way of helping people and maybe a population you really want to work with, And so anyways, something just to be mindful of as you are working with different kinds of people and stuff that comes up, like when it comes to legal and ethical things. Sorry, this is so much information. I'm trying to make sure I hit all the bases because wow, I don't know what just happened there, because I know how important law and ethics is. So I hope this is helpful if you're getting a chance to listen to it. Sorry for all the individual videos. I just want to try to capture it all. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.